I'd like to ask Don, actually, I don't know whether we're running out of time, what you think about the fine tuning of physics for life. But before I do that, actually, Kurt, would it be all right to say, what's wrong with the multiverse? Because, no, I'm really excited about this, actually, because this has been an argument that's been in the academic journals about probability for decades, since 1982. But in a typical case of academics talking to themselves, nobody knows about it outside of academic philosophy, despite huge interest in fine tuning and some physicists arguing for the multiverse, some theists arguing for God, and so on. So I'm really excited to get it out to a broader audience. So yeah, the basic claim is that it's the inference from fine tuning to a multiverse commits the inverse gambler's fallacy, right? So suppose Don and I go to a casino tonight, and we walk in, and the first thing, we go into a small room and we see someone. There's just one guy having this incredible run of luck at roulette. It's just winning and winning and winning, and and I turn to Don and say, "Wow, the casino must be full tonight." And Don turns to me and says, "What are you talking about? We've just seen this one guy." And I say, "Well, if there are tens of thousands of people playing roulette in the casino, then it's not so surprising that someone's going to have an incredible run of luck." And that's just what we've observed, someone having an incredible run of luck. Now, everyone agrees that's a fallacy, right? Our observational evidence is just this one individual having an incredible run of luck. And no matter how many people there are playing roulette in other rooms in the casino, it has no bearing on the likelihood of this one particular person we've observed. It's related to the more familiar gambler's fallacy. You think, "Oh, I've had a terrible luck all night. I'm bound to win big now." So everyone agrees that's a fallacy, but it looks, to my mind, indiscernible to the reasoning of the multiverse theorist, at least if they're arguing from fine tuning. You look around and think, "Oh my God, the numbers in physics are just right for life. There must be loads of other universes with terrible numbers," right? Well, our observational evidence is just this one universe we've observed. No matter how many other universes there are, has no bearing on the likelihood of this one universe we've observed getting the right numbers. It's just like postulating other people playing other people playing roulette elsewhere in the casino to explain the one individual we've observed. Now, there are all sorts of, there's the anthropic principle people bring up. There's the scientific case for the multiverse. Well, actually, I'm also excited that even though this particular objection to the multiverse has been discussed for decades in the journals, no one's connected it to the actual scientific discussion based in inflationary cosmology of the multiverse. So that's what I try to do in the book. So I think, even once you take into account the anthropic principle and the scientific evidence for eternal inflation and so on, I still think the basic problem survives, that it's just fallacious, demonstrably fallacious reasoning. And so we're stuck with cosmic purpose.
So what if someone says, well, it's not a fallacy because in that example with observing the person winning over and over, you could potentially see other people not winning. Whereas in the case of the fine-tuning of the universe, a better analogy would be that we're in the office where people come in to get their check for winning the lottery, and we keep seeing people there, and we're like, "Oh, everyone's winning the lottery." Yeah, but you're only able to see the people who are winning the lottery. So that would be the better analogy.
Good. Yes. So that's kind of appealing to the anthropic principle. Well, two things. One, we could just add to the analogy, right? Suppose there's a sniper at the back of the room waiting to blow our brains out as we walk in, if the first person isn't winning big, right? And so we create a kind of artificial selection effect. So now it's just like real world fine tuning, right? In that scenario, the only thing we were able to observe is someone winning big, but that still doesn't mean the fallacy goes away. But at a deeper level, I think, and this is what I go into in the book, we know what's going on behind this fallacy. It's rooted in a very important principle in probabilistic reasoning called the requirement of total evidence, which is the principle that you're obliged to always work with the most specific evidence you have. So suppose, Don's on trial for murder, and the jury the prosecution says to the jury, Don always carries a knife around with him. When the reality of the situation is Don always carries a butter knife around with him. Right? Now, the prosecution has thereby misled the jury, but they haven't lied. They've misled them by not giving the most specific information we have, which is not just that he carries a knife, but that he carries specifically a butter knife. So this is a very important, well-accepted principle. This is what the multiverse theorist violates, because they construe the evidence of fine-tuning as some universe is fine-tuned, right? And then that's made more likely by a multiverse. But we've had more specific evidence than that, namely that this universe is fine-tuned. Just like in the casino case, our more specific evidence is this person has played well. Now, we're obliged by this principle to work with that more specific evidence. And once we do, then a multiverse is not going to explain fine-tuning. I mean, maybe I could I've talked a lot already, but the case you give is Roger White, who wrote the classic paper on this in the year 2000, it's what he calls a converse selection effect, right? The example you gave where we're in the office, where if someone plays big, someone plays well, we're going to observe them, right? So that's like, with the real world selection effect, that the real world selection effect is that if we exist, the universe must be fine-tuned. But it's not the other way around. It's not if there's a fine-tuned universe, we're going to be in it. That's the converse selection effect. So White makes that clear with a sort of sci-fi analogy. Imagine we were once disembodied spirits floating through the multiverse, looking for a fine-tuned universe. And once we find a fine-tuned universe, we go into it. In that case, there'll be a converse selection effect. Right? Not only if we exist, then the universe is fine-tuned, but if there's a fine-tuned universe, we're going to exist and be in it. Right? So that's a converse selection effect, and that's what's modeled in the very example you gave. If someone plays well, we're going to observe them, but that's not the real-world selection effect. The real-world selection effect is captured by my sniper example, and as you see, that doesn't remove the fallacy. Sorry, that was very long-winded, but it's a big and fascinating discussion.
My view on the fine-tuning is this, of the universe, is this. The one consciousness is fundamental. This infinite, unbounded consciousness that you and I are is fundamental. And space-time is just a headset, one of countless headsets that it's using to look at itself. And so when it projects itself, it is life itself. And when it projects itself, the projection, sometimes parts of the projection make clear what is living, and sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes things look like rocks. Sometimes things look like living organisms. And there's an arrow of time that's part of the projection. There is no time in the one infinite consciousness. So all of this, the notion of time, the notion of a Big Bang, an arrow of time, an evolution from less complicated to more complicated things, all of that is an artifact of the headset. The fundamental reality is this infinite life, infinite consciousness, looking at itself through a headset. And so the reason why there's the appearance of fine-tuning is because the universe is nothing but a headset of an already existing living thing that's looking at itself through the headset. So a consistent projection will be consistent with life.
If you enjoyed that clip, then the full podcast is out right now. You can click around here. Enjoy. Subscribe to Theories of Everything to get notified of upcoming podcasts, as there are new full-length podcasts every week on the topics of mathematics, physics, consciousness, free will, and AI.